The moment you start over-explaining is the moment people stop respecting you, especially when you finish talking, and they just nod to move on. Not because you said something wrong, but because you just put yourself in a position where you need permission. If you've ever left a conversation and felt like you just got smaller, like this video, not for me. So it reaches people who are standing in that exact spot right now. And if you want to learn how to hold your position without saying more than you need to, subscribe. This channel is for people who are tired of having to explain. Drop one word in the comments. Done. Every conversation is a silent measurement. Who needs who more? Who's trying to convince? And who's standing still while keeping their position? The world isn't kind. It's polite, but it's constantly evaluating. It's watching who flinches first, who rushes to fill the silence, who needs validation, who can sit in uncertainty without scrambling to fix it. And here's what happens when you stand in the wrong position long enough. People don't need to insult you anymore. They just ignore you. Because you've already told them where you rank, not with your title, not with your credentials, but with how much you felt the need to explain yourself when no explanation was required. Think about the last time you walked away from a conversation, replaying every word you said. That sinking feeling in your chest, that heat creeping up your neck, that loop in your head where you rehear yourself talking and wish you could take back half of it. That feeling isn't embarrassment. That's recognition. You just showed someone you were negotiating for their approval. And once someone sees you negotiate, they know you're not secure in your position. Here's the belief most people carry around like gospel. If I explain more clearly, I'll be understood better. And if I'm understood better, I'll be respected more. No, it's actively hurting you. Let me flip this completely. People don't disrespect you because they don't understand you. They disrespect you because you need them to understand. Read that again. The need itself is what changes everything. When you rush to clarify, when you add context nobody asked for, when you justify your choices before anyone challenges them, you're broadcasting something. You're saying your validity depends on their comprehension. You're saying you need their mental approval before you can move forward with confidence. And the moment someone senses you need their approval, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer an equal in the conversation. You're below them. You're a supplicant. And supplicants don't get respect. They get tolerance at best, dismissal at worst. Here's the part that stings. The more you explain, the less they believe you. Not because your explanation is weak, but because strong positions don't need reinforcement. Certainty doesn't require backup. Certainty just exists. When someone says, "I'm not interested" once and walks away, you believe them. When someone says, "I'm not interested," and then spends 5 minutes explaining why they're not interested, and all the reasons it's not personal, and how they really thought about it, you start to wonder if they're trying to convince themselves. The same thing happens when you over-explain. People stop listening to your words and start listening to your need. And need always sounds like weakness. People who study power understood this a long time ago. Position is felt, not explained. People with actual authority don't rush to clarify. They let others adjust to their silence. They let the discomfort sit. They understand that certainty doesn't require vocabulary. Certainty requires stillness. When someone questions them, they don't defend. They either ignore it entirely or they ask a clarifying question that puts the burden back on the other person. They never scramble, because scrambling signals doubt. Power comes from certainty, not from explanation. Let's go deeper into why this happens. Why do we over-explain in the first place? First, survival instinct. Your brain is wired for social survival. Being excluded from the group used to mean death. Literal death, no shelter, no protection, no resources. So your nervous system still treats social rejection like a threat to your existence. When someone questions you, challenges you, or misunderstands you, your brain doesn't think this is a minor miscommunication. It thinks I'm about to be cast out. So what do? You explain, you clarify, you justify, you try to close the gap between what you meant and what they heard. But you're not communicating, you're defending. And defense always comes from a lower position. This goes back to childhood. You learned early that explaining yourself could prevent punishment, that if you could just make the adult understand your reasoning, maybe they'd be less angry, maybe they'd let it go. So you built a reflex. When someone's upset, explain. When someone doubts you, explain. When someone seems confused, explain. That reflex saved you as a kid, but as an adult, it's killing your credibility. Because adults aren't looking for explanations. They're looking for people who are comfortable with being misunderstood. Second, the obsession with being misunderstood. Most people believe that being understood correctly equals being treated well. They think if they just knew my intentions, they'd see I'm not the bad guy. But here's the truth. Power doesn't need to be understood. Power doesn't care if you get it or not. Power simply states its position and moves forward. When you rush to correct someone's perception of you, you're admitting that their perception matters more than your reality. You're handing them the scoreboard. You're saying you get to decide if I'm valid. And once you do that, you've already lost. Let me tell you about someone I watched do this in real time. We'll call him David. Mid-level manager, smart guy, knew his stuff. But every time he presented an idea in a meeting, he'd spend the first 3 minutes pre-defending it. He'd say things like, I know this might sound unconventional, but hear me out. Or I thought about a few different approaches, and this one seemed like the best fit given our constraints. Or, I'm open to feedback. I just think this could work if we consider these factors. And every single time, before anyone even spoke, he'd already positioned himself as someone whose idea needed approval. Then one day, a new director joined. Same meeting format. He walked in, put one slide on the screen, and said, we're doing this. Didn't explain why. Didn't justify the approach. Didn't pre-apologize for potential objections. Just stated it. Someone asked, why not the other option? He said, because this one's faster. That was it. No elaboration, no defense. And you know what happened? Everyone nodded and moved on. Same room, same people, different frame. One person asked for permission. The other declared reality. Guess which one got respect? Third layer. And this is the deepest one. You've tied your self-worth to your words. When someone doubts what you said, you feel like they're doubting who you are. So, explaining becomes about protecting your ego, not about communicating information. You're not trying to be clear. You're trying to prove you're not the kind of person who gets questioned. You're trying to restore a sense of safety. But the more you explain, the more you confirm their suspicion. Because confident people don't need to rebuild their credibility mid-conversation. Their presence does it for them. Here's a test. Think about the last time someone challenged something small you said. Maybe you told them a restaurant closes at 9, and they thought it closed at 10. Did you just shrug and say, maybe I'm wrong, check it? Or did you feel this little spike of urgency to prove you were right? Did you pull out your phone immediately? Did you explain why you thought it was 9? Did you feel some weird need to demonstrate you're not the kind of person who gets facts wrong? That spike, that urgency, that's ego protection, and it makes you look smaller every single time. If you're feeling uncomfortable right now, it's not because I'm wrong. It's because you've explained like this. Maybe this week, and you know exactly how that conversation ended. You felt smaller. You felt like you said too much. And even though they nodded, you could feel it. They weren't listening anymore. They were just waiting for you to stop. That moment when you see their eyes glaze over. When you realize you're still talking but they checked out 3 sentences ago, that's the moment you know you lost the room. And you can't get it back by adding more words. You can only make it worse. Let me show you what this looks like in practice, because theory doesn't change behavior. Real examples do. Scenario 1. You're in a meeting. You just finished presenting a strategy. Someone from another team says this idea doesn't feel convincing. Old version of you goes into overdrive. Well, actually, if you look at the data from last quarter, and you consider the timeline we're working with, and you factor in the budget constraints we have, it makes a lot of sense. I think maybe I didn't explain the context clearly enough, but here's what I was trying to say. We ran the numbers, and when you look at customer feedback and compare it to what competitors are doing, this approach really does address the core issues. I know it's different from what we usually do, but I think if we just give it a chance and see how it performs in the first month, we'll have a better sense of whether it's the right direction. By the end of that, you've lost. Not because the idea is bad, but because you just spent 90 seconds justifying yourself to someone who threw out one vague sentence. You made their doubt more important than your analysis. You shifted from presenter to defendant. And everyone in that room felt it. New version, same scenario, same comment. This idea doesn't feel convincing. You pause for 1 second. Then you say, okay, what part isn't landing for you? That's it. 6 words. No defense. No scramble. You just flipped the pressure back onto them. Now they have to explain their critique. Now they have to do the work. And here's what happens next. Either they have a legitimate point, in which case you can address it from a position of control, or they don't, and their vague criticism just falls flat in front of everyone. Either way, you stayed in your power. You didn't chase their approval. You made them justify their position, not the other way around. Scenario 2. Personal relationship. They say you've been distant lately. Old version goes into panic mode. No, I haven't. I've just been really busy with work, and I know I haven't been as responsive. But it's not intentional. I still care about you. I just have a lot on my plate right now, and I'm trying to manage everything. And I didn't mean to make you feel like I'm pulling away. It's just been a rough few weeks, and I've had deadlines piling up, and I haven't had as much time to check my phone, but that doesn't mean anything about how I feel about this. I promise I'm not trying to create distance. I've just been overwhelmed. You just apologized for having a life. You justified your own time. You reassured them like you owe them an explanation for your attention. You made their perception of distance more real than your actual intentions. And now, instead of them adjusting to your reality, you're bending to accommodate their feelings about something that might not even be a real problem. New version. Same comment. You've been distant lately. You pause. You don't panic. You say, maybe, I've been reprioritizing some things. That's it. Short. Honest. No defense. You acknowledged their observation without making it a crisis. You stated your reality without asking for permission to have one. And here's what happens. They either respect that and ask a follow-up question from a place of curiosity, or they push back and try to make you wrong for having priorities. If they respect it, the dynamic stays balanced. If they push back, you just learn something valuable about whether they're trying to understand you or control you. But, either way, you didn't shrink. Scenario 3. Someone implies you're wrong about something small. They say, I thought you said the meeting was at 3. Old you jumps in. I did say 3, or at least I thought I did. Maybe I got confused with another meeting. I've had a lot on my calendar this week, and I might have mixed up the times. Sorry if I caused any confusion. I usually double-check these things, but I guess I missed it this time. I'll make sure to send a confirmation email next time, so we're all on the same page. You just turned a simple time mix-up into a character confession. You apologized for being human. You created a new rule for yourself, that you have to send confirmation emails now, just to prove you're not careless. All because someone mentioned a time. New version. Same comment. I thought you said 3. You respond calmly. It's at 2. Did I say 3? That's it. Neutral tone. No defense. You corrected the information without treating it like a moral failure. If they keep pressing, You just stay calm and say, must have been a miscommunication. It's at 2. No drama, no justification, just information. And you move on like it's not a referendum on your competence. The pattern in all 3 examples is the same. Old version tries to manage the other person's feelings, tries to prevent judgment, tries to prove you're still a good person who deserves to be in the room. New version just states reality and lets the other person adjust. One is a negotiation, the other is a declaration. One asks for permission, the other doesn't need it. Here's what this really is. This isn't a communication tactic. This is a shift in identity. You're stepping out of the role of someone who needs to be accepted and stepping into the role of someone who gives themselves permission. When you stop over-explaining, you're not being cold. You're not being rude. You're being unmovable. And unmovable people don't get tested as much, because testing them costs energy. People test you when they sense hesitation. They test you when they feel you might fold. They test you when your boundaries look soft. But when you respond with calm certainty, when you don't rush to fill silence, when you don't apologize for existing, something shifts. The frame changes. You stop being the person who has to earn their spot in the conversation. You become the person who's already there. And that shift is everything. Because once you stop trying to prove you belong, you stop acting like someone who doesn't. So, here's what to do this week. 3 things. First, catch yourself mid-explanation. The moment you feel yourself adding context that nobody asked for, stop. Just stop talking. It'll feel uncomfortable. Let it. That discomfort is your nervous system recalibrating. You're teaching it that silence after a statement is not dangerous. Second, when someone challenges you, pause for 2 full seconds before responding. In that pause, ask yourself, am I about to defend or am I about to clarify? If it's defend, don't say it. If it's clarify, keep it to 1 sentence. Third, practice saying, I'm not explaining that, without the explanation of why you're not explaining. Just let the boundary exist. You don't owe anyone a reason for every choice you make. Explaining is the language of people asking for acceptance. Strategic silence is the language of people who have position. Stay here if you choose to stop asking permission to exist, to stop justifying every decision, and to stop saying more than is necessary. Because the people who stay quiet at the right moments, they're not the ones left explaining themselves later. They're the ones others are trying to explain themselves to. That's the difference.